r/ask Reddit. What's the best way you've seen someone rebel against school rules? Back in the 1980s there was one kid in my school was hardcore into the punk scene. Had a bright blue, 6 inches high, razor thin, stand up straight mohawk. The principal gave him detention for being a distraction, etc. And his parting words that day were, "And tomorrow, no more blue mohawk." The next day the kid came in with the same mohawk, only bright pink. He should have seen this one coming. No hats in school. In high school junior year, there was this one kid in my grade that was allowed to due to him having alopecia universalis, which is basically having rapid baldness. A new teacher wasn't aware that he was allowed to and asked him to take it off. The kid explained why he was able to, but the sub didn't believe him, forced him to take it off, and was being very cruel to him for wearing the hat his lack of hair. The next day, everyone wore hats to school as a sort of rebellion against the teacher. She got really mad and started yelling at the students and said some nasty things. She got fired. Senior year, my school banned jackets. A friend was cold, wore his jacket to lunch, and the VP told him to take it off. Friend pulls out the student handbook and asked where it said he couldn't wear it. VP flips for a while and ends up showing him the comma or anything. The administration seems disruptive clause. Friend rolls his eyes but takes off his coat. The next day, friend comes in with the same tweed sport coat the VP wore every day. Who the hell bans jackets? My school did once. They said it was dangerous if there ever was a fire. How the hell they came to that conclusion I know not. However, the school was really poorly built with concrete walls and next to no heating, so at some times of the year the indoor heat fell below 15°C. The Work Environment Authority recommends an indoor temperature of 20-24°C. We told our teachers to basically either let us wear jackets or fix the heating, otherwise we would report them. They let us wear them. I was at a private school that had rules about the length of boys' hair. One guy in particular always ignored the rule and the administration would tell him to get a haircut every so often, but he never did. Eventually when his hair got about down to his shoulders, the principal pulled him aside and told him his hair was twice the allowed length and by next week it needed to be shortened by half. Monday rolls around and he comes in with half his head shaved and the other side as long as ever. We were impressed by literal interpretation of the principal's request, but it still ended up with him getting a suspension for a week and he had to shave the other side before he could come back. After 9/11 my school made a rule where we had to wear our school IDs. They went overboard quick, handing out detention to anyone who didn't wear one. One kid had his ID blown up and put on a shirt. On the back it said, "Yes, I'm wearing my ducking ID." He got detention for not wearing it with the shirt. We had to do that too, but then everyone started using them as weapons and whipping the shit out of each other in the hallway, or Indiana Jones snapping it at St. Peter's. It lasted less than a year before they took them away. Friend was told in high school by his guidance counselor not to waste his time applying to his dream school because he wouldn't get in. He got pissed off and went to the principal, who told him it was the counselor's job to give her best opinion. So he trusts whatever she says. He applied anyways and got in. He took the acceptance letter, made a copy, and taped them to both the principal and counselor's door with "thanks for nothing" written on both. He didn't even go to that school. He couldn't afford it, but it was the principle of the matter. The "I trust what my counselors say" thing is such a lazy attempt for the principal to essentially say, "I don't want to deal with trouble from my staff, so I won't even address the problem." When I was in high school, there was a rule implemented that if you showed up late to school, you had to go to the front office to get a detention slip. You would then have to give it to the teacher for that period, who would then mark it down, and you were required to go to lunch detention for that day. I figured out by the third slip that literally no one cared. Teachers, security, or students. So when I was subsequently late for the rest of the year, I would take out an old slip that I had from a previous detention, walk through school, give it to my teacher to mark down, then take it back to give to the lunch detention supervisor. But I never went to detention because the front office didn't have record of me being late. I was late no less than 50 times my senior year, only having been reprimanded the initial 3 times. I even told my parents about it after I had graduated and even they agreed it was dumb and funny. When I was in grade 7, our last class of the day, Students would always bring in snacks. Our lunch shift was way too early in the day, so by the end of the school day we'd all be feeling hungry. And we were all told by our teacher that if we didn't have enough to share we couldn't eat in the classroom. One day, almost all of us brought in enough food to share, even with the students that didn't bring anything in. We even synchronized the times that we pulled all our food out. Our teacher was clueless. She had no idea what to tell us. There wasn't any school-wide no food in classrooms rule, so she couldn't run to the principal. Finally she gave in to our malicious compliance and allowed us to share food for the rest of the period. Guy was wearing shoes against the uniform policy and was asked to put on shoes from lost property. He went around school barefoot all day. How does a pair of shoes end up in lost property? I'm imagining another kid at some point, also walking round all day barefoot, like wonder where the duck my shoes are? Plenty of students would bring in shoes that they only planned on wearing for gym or something. A kid was passing notes, and the teacher caught him and insisted he had to give the note so she could read it out loud. He ate the note. I can only imagine what it said that he felt the need to eat it, lol. One of my classmates got sent to the office for wearing gang colors because he has a red Marine Corps bandana tied to his backpack. The rest of the year he wore a pinstripe suit with vest and carried a fedora. Funny how the mafia isn't considered a gang. My daughters both went to a Catholic high school. My younger one had a bit of a wild streak. The girls were required to wear a skirt every day to school. My daughter did not care for this rule and wore her skirt around her head one day since the dress code required the students to wear a skirt, but just not wear. I was told that she was wearing spandex underneath. That's how my daughter got a new rule in her high school dress code. My high school was always issuing new dress code rules for the girls. Mini skirts had to be longer than your arm, no tube tops, etc. One day, all the boys dressed in drag, breaking all the rules. No violation because the dress code specified only girls. That's bullshit. If you got long ape arms you gotta wear stuff down to your knees. If you got short ass T-Rex arms you can just walk around in your underwear. Elementary school had a ban on extreme hair colors. My brother shows up with fire truck red hair. Principal stops us both as we're entering the school and she's going off on my brother. She's berating him, saying who do you know that has red hair like that? Without skipping a beat. Ronald McDonald. Principal just grabbed him, drug him into the office. My 4th grade brain was in shock that he just won up to grown up like that. She called my dad and he promptly didn't give a duck and months later bro went from red to green to purple. Okay, so we need to have clear backpacks, right? This kid puts quite the vulgar image depicting the counselor on one of his notebooks and packs it against the edges of the pack. Guns and drugs. The kind of thing that kids aren't supposed to have, so they just toss them into their backpack loose like a knot wrapped up or stuck into a book or something. I went to a Catholic grade school growing up that had a strict boys hair length policy. It couldn't touch the collar of your shirt and I wanted long hair. So the principal came in one day to talk to the class. When she was leaving the room she called me out for my long hair in front of my classmates. My response was to point to the cross hanging above the door and said Jesus had long hair. She didn't know what to say right away and seemed embarrassed, but then pulled me outside and yelled at me to get it cut. Don't mess with Catholic nuns. You can almost call it a Hail Mary tactic. In my private school boys were required to wear a collared shirt. It really wasn't enforced. Until one day it was. I was wearing a sweater without a collared shirt underneath and I had to go back to the dorm and change. I argued that I didn't look ratty or underdressed at all, but they said rules were rules. The next day I wore a white t-shirt with a collar, cut off from one of my older shirts, stapled to it. It looked terrible, but rules are rules. In 3rd grade, early 90s, my brother did not want to participate in some sort of multiple class activity. He just hung around the edges until a teacher approached him and told him, "Now dear, you can't be here without participating." Brother took what she said to heart and waited for a chance to slip away. He made it about 3 miles before a family friend noticed him and drove him the rest of the way home. I remember mom being upset at him, but even more angry at the school for taking 4 hours to notice he was gone when they took a head count after lunch. It's not really a rebellion against the rules, but a good friend of mine had a special talent to make teachers like him despite having no respect for the actual school system. He used to study on his own to ace the tests, rarely showed up to classes he didn't like, and still got perfect report cards with high praises from all the teachers. The height of it was where he convinced his homeroom teacher to come pick him up from the beach before an important test. He eventually went on to have a great military career, but if he ever gets into politics, I wouldn't be surprised if he somehow managed to convince everyone that world domination under his rule was their idea. I think I like this guy. Sounds like the type of dude who could lead us to world peace without anybody realizing what he's doing. Or, alternatively, led us all to world annihilation. So let's hope he uses his powers for good. The canteen stopped selling sachets of red sauce due to the mess some kids were making. My friend carried a huge bottle of red sauce in his bag for at least a month and provided illegal red sauce for the cost of 5p per squirt. Made a fortune. I was in a Christian high school at the time. The day before winter break rolls around and I had packed a few Toblerone chocolate bars and some notes for the teachers I most appreciated, with the intention of leaving them as a Christmas gift. Before school, the principal made a public announcement that students were not to give any teachers any gifts unless we were going to give all teachers the same gift. This was obviously a bit of a problem since I couldn't exactly come back the next day with additional candy bars. So I marched into her office to address this issue. Upon entering the office, I made a show of opening a chocolate bar and breaking off exactly one piece and placing it on her desk. I told her that I was going to give her a full candy bar, but I now had to share her chocolate bar with other teachers that I didn't really care so much about anyways. That rule was quietly lifted. In 11th grade, now 30 years ago, we were told to use Memorial Day as a weather makeup day from Hurricane Hugo. Us students, and many teachers, felt this was disrespectful and suggested to just add the day to the end of the school year. The state insisted. Very few people showed up for school, including me, my brother, and most of the faculty. Same, but ours was on a Saturday. Almost no one came to school. My brother missed enough school during the year that the school required he attend summer school. The penalty for not attending summer school? You'll be kicked out of summer school. So he never went, and they didn't hold him back, because he knew all the material. I had a teacher who got into a power struggle with every reasonably smart kid, so we tended not to try in her class. As a result, she began to grade the progress monitoring tool we used. This proved to me that the tool didn't matter. If it did, she would have graded it from the start instead of waiting until she realized she looked bad. So I began to fail every test I took on the platform. She was really angry at me and told me to call my parents. But my parents backed me because choosing to fail is not a violation of any rule. Teachers said students need their shirts tucked in. Never said how much needs to be tucked in. So when one of my friends got told to tuck in his shirt, he stood still, used one finger, and tucked in a tiny portion of the back of his shirt into his pants, then walked off. Was later called to the office because they thought he was acting out and not obeying rules. But the kid's parents said that he followed the rule. It never said the whole shirt needs to be tucked in. So the principal, secretary, and teacher all have to let the kid off. The next day, the principal makes an announcement to the whole school that boys need to have their entire shirt tucked in the entire way. We laughed about it. Kid pissed in the trash can when the substitute wouldn't let him leave to use the restroom. I had a friend in high school who would stand around on campus nonchalantly smoking cigarettes, and would bring beer to drink at break and lunch. He gave 0 FKs who saw him, and oddly enough he never got in trouble for it. He recently got out of prison. Well, that escalated at an understandable rate. There was a presentation on vaping last year by some poor woman from an advocacy group or something. After every sentence, or whenever she paused, the whole assembly, all 300 kids in my grade, would give a massive standing ovation. We weren't stopped until we had done it like 15 times. Holy shit. We did this exact same thing to the Balfour representative, guy from this company who spent an entire hour trying to convince to buy class rings, shirts, socks, pants, etc. Our class is a little bigger, about 900, and we just erupted after almost every word. The guy started playing into it too. He would make dramatic pauses to give us time to clap. Because of the clapping, we missed the only important part of his speech, which was about buying caps and gowns, and nearly everyone missed the deadline. We had to have a lecture about paying attention, and then they extended the deadline to buy caps and gowns. Blistering heat to the point of people passing out. We're all forced to wear black trousers. We're dying of the heart, and a guy comes in shorts, gets sent home only to return after reading the school rules on uniform. He is in a school colors plaid skirt, ducking legendary. Not me, but my friend's dad. So a good 50 years ago, his teacher told him his tie was the most important part of the uniform and he had to wear it no matter what. That lunchtime he gathered half his school year, and the next day, about 100 people turned up wearing nothing but underwear and a tie. Late 80s, my high school banned tank tops, but they were allowed with something over them. They also banned mesh or sheer shirts, only allowed with something under them. Guy I knew, pretty much every day, wore a tank top with a mesh shirt over it. A guy I know ran a campaign to lift my old high school's strict policy on facial hair, which is to have none unless religiously exempt, which they gave you a card for that, I and probably others called the beard badge. He refused to shave and had a banner and shirts made that said, with a great beard comes great responsibility. Not a specific person, but when a heatwave hit the UK a few years ago and schoolboys in many schools started wearing skirts in protest of having to wear trousers in the scorching heat because there was no stipulation of gender in the uniform regulations. These lads are only a few years younger than me, and back in my school days wearing a skirt would get you called gay and ostracized. So it impresses me both in the sense of how fast times have changed and because being technically correct is the best kind of correct. Someone stole a key from the janitor. He just left them on his desk. It happened to be a universal key to all the locks, except for the server room. The server room, although, had a second hidden door which they found. They came in after school and stole the servers from the school. All the grades and data for the students were on those servers. The teachers had to figure out how to recreate all the students' grades, which honestly they did poorly. Pretty much everyone passed every class. You could just argue for a better grade. I went to a very Christian school where on Halloween we were allowed to dress up for that day, but we couldn't wear any unholy outfits, like ghosts, demons, or basically anything scary, or witches. Now, my friend had an idea to screw over the teachers, so the next day she showed up in a witch costume, but it was a 17th century Salem witch trials witch. She's wearing a Puritan dress and holding a Bible. The teacher asked who she was. She would say, "I'm a witch." The teachers were put in a situation where she was technically a witch, but it was historical blah blah blah. She did end up at the principal's office for breaking the rules. She got to wear it though. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.